Welcome to the Sleepy Voyager, where every night we drift into the quiet corners of wonder and possibility. Tonight, we journey far beyond the stars, into a realm where science meets imagination, where entire civilizations build megastructures so vast they can swallow stars. Settle in, let your thoughts grow soft, and ask yourself, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Whether you're lying in a small apartment in Tokyo, curled up in the warmth of your bed in Oslo, or watching moonlight spill across your floor in Buenos Aires, you're not alone. You're part of something infinite. Now close your eyes, take a slow breath, and come with me as we explore the dream of Dyson spheres, when civilizations swallow stars. Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered if someone, something, is looking back? Not from a planet like ours, not with eyes like ours, but from the quiet orbit of a faraway sun, nestled inside a structure so massive, so still, it swallows light itself. A structure built not to conquer, but to collect, to sip the energy of a star in complete silence. Somewhere out there, hidden in the darkness between the stars, such a thing might exist. And maybe, just maybe, it's watching the cosmos the same way we watch the stars. Quietly, curiously, peacefully. The night sky has always whispered to us. From the time we first gathered around firelight, we've stared upward, tracing patterns in the stars, imagining gods, beasts, and heroes. But the truth is more mysterious, more humbling. The stars are not just lights scattered for our amusement. They are suns, distant and ancient, each one perhaps surrounded by planets, moons, clouds of gas, and perhaps, in the deepest stretches of time, by civilizations. When you look up, you're not just seeing light, you're seeing the past. That glow traveled hundreds, thousands, even millions of years to reach your eyes. And somewhere in that long journey, beyond the haze of our atmosphere and the reach of our technology, things may be happening that we've never dared to imagine. There's something calming about the scale of it all, the sheer silence of space, the patience of stars. Our own sun, a stable, glowing companion, has been shining for over 4 billion years. It doesn't rush, it doesn't flicker in confusion. It just burns, gently, powering everything we know. Trees stretching toward the light, oceans cycling through tides, hearts beating in warm bodies under blankets. But now, think beyond that. Imagine another star, somewhere far from here, and around it, not emptiness, but something vast, intentional, and constructed. Not a planet, not a ring, not a ship. Something different, something built to catch every beam of that star's light. Not for war, not for survival, but because it can. Because a civilization advanced enough, peaceful enough, enduring enough, no longer looks outward with hunger, but with harmony. This is the silence between stars. This is where imagination begins to blend with science. Not loud science fiction with laser beams and battles, but soft, thoughtful wondering. What would it take to harness the full energy of a star? What kind of beings would live slowly enough, long enough to even try? They wouldn't be hurried. They wouldn't be desperate. They'd be serene, methodical. A species that has overcome the turbulence of its youth. A people who have learned that there's no need to burn their world to stay warm, not when the sun is so generous. They would float their collectors gently into orbit, one by one, until the starlight no longer spills outward into the void, but is caught and held and used with care. Here, in this deep imagining, we find the beginning of the Dyson sphere, not as a mechanical marvel, but as a quiet monument to patience. We haven't seen one. We may never see one. But the universe is so wide, so old, that to believe we are the only minds to wonder, the only hands to build, that would be the true fantasy. It's not just about how vast the cosmos is. It's about how small we are, and yet how far our thoughts can reach. Even from a quiet bed in a quiet room, your mind can stretch across galaxies. You can float past Mars, past Jupiter, beyond the reach of our telescopes and satellites. to where the sky is black and the stars are few and far between. And somewhere in that silence, you might drift past a strange absence, a place where a star should shine but doesn't, a dimness in the darkness, a hidden sun, not dead, not missing, but wrapped in the quiet embrace of something ancient. In that stillness, in that mystery, we begin to listen, not with ears, but with questions. Who are they? What do they know? And what do they dream of as they float in their starlit world? Perhaps they no longer dream of conquest or progress, but of understanding, of harmony, of balance. Maybe their greatest technology isn't their Dyson sphere, but their ability to rest, to be still, to exist without hurry, surrounded by a light they've tamed but never extinguished. As you lie in your bed tonight, remember this. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness beyond human reach, a civilization may be sleeping too. Their light hidden, their voices quiet, their machines humming softly in the dark. And maybe, in some small, unknowable way, you are not so far from them. There's a certain kind of mind that looks at the ordinary and sees something vast hiding underneath. One of those minds belonged to Freeman Dyson. He wasn't the kind of scientist who built rockets or ran experiments in underground labs. He was something rarer, a dreamer of equations, a thinker who could look at the laws of physics and ask not just what is, but what could be. In the 1960s, at a time when humans were still sending their first shaky signals into space and walking clumsily into orbit, Dyson asked a question that seemed almost too big. What would it look like if a civilization grew so advanced that it could capture every last drop of energy from its star? Most people never think about energy in the way Dyson did. We flip on lights, we charge our phones, we burn fuels, all without really wondering where it all comes from. But Dyson understood that all energy, at its root, flows from stars. Everything we build, every meal we eat, every step we take, it all depends on the sun's light, either directly or through ancient sunlight stored in fossil fuels. Even the wind and rain are driven by solar warmth. So what happens, Dyson asked, when a civilization wants more energy than a planet can provide? What happens when they outgrow their world, not by spreading across land, but by reaching upward into space, toward the very source of all their power? The idea was simple, yet profound. If a civilization needs more energy than its planet receives, why not collect it all? Not just the narrow beam that strikes the surface, but every angle, every direction, every photon the star emits. Build something around the star, Dyson suggested. A structure, a swarm, a network. Let it float in space, gently absorbing the sunlight before it can escape. He wasn't talking about science fiction. He wasn't writing a novel. He was proposing a natural step in cosmic evolution. Just as bacteria once learned to absorb sunlight through photosynthesis, and humans learned to burn wood, and then oil, and then split atoms, some far future beings might learn to swallow starlight itself. Dyson wasn't saying we should build such a thing. He was saying someone else might have already done it. That was the heart of the idea, not just to dream, but to observe. He looked out at the stars and imagined that if such megastructures existed, they wouldn't shine like ordinary suns. They'd be dimmer, cooler, maybe glowing faintly in infrared as the energy was absorbed, used, and re-emitted. He wasn't designing a future. He was building a filter, a way to look for signs of advanced life by noticing what was missing. Not flashy signals or flying saucers, just absence, just stars that looked a little too quiet. It was a gentle kind of thinking, almost meditative. Dyson wasn't asking us to believe in aliens or conspiracies. He was asking us to trust the logic of growth, the long arc of time. Civilizations, if they last, will need energy. They'll seek it. And the most obvious place to find it is the nearest star. It's not a matter of fantasy, it's a matter of thermodynamics. And over thousands, millions of years, the math points outward, past cities, past power plants, into orbit, around the sun. Dyson didn't imagine it as a sudden leap, but as a slow unfolding, like a flower blooming toward the light. There's something deeply human about that way of thinking, to look into the sky, not with fear or desperation, but with curiosity and patience. To imagine beings not unlike ourselves, walking through their own long histories, their own dark ages and awakenings, their own quiet revolutions in science and spirit. A civilization that grows gently, spreading into its solar system with care. Not to dominate, but to survive. Not to expand for the sake of power, but to preserve balance, to gather the warmth that sustains them. Freeman Dyson's idea has since taken on a life of its own. People have imagined shells, swarms, rings, webs, and clouds of collectors. But at its core, the idea remains simple and serene. The future doesn't have to be loud. It can be quiet. It can be patient. It can drift slowly around a star, collecting light, never hurried, never harsh. It's not a war machine or a cosmic empire. It's a mirror held up to the sun and to ourselves. And so, lying here, listening to this, you may wonder how many such structures might already be out there. How many quiet stars are hiding something? How many minds have already walked this path, thousands or millions of years ahead of us, and come to the same conclusion Dyson did, that to endure is to evolve. To evolve is to learn. And to learn is to reach, not blindly, but wisely, toward the light. Imagine standing at the edge of a quiet world, looking up, not at a star, but at something far stranger. The sky is not dark, not speckled with stars. Instead, it glows softly in all directions. There's no single source of light, no sunrise or sunset. Just a warm, constant shimmer, like a gentle golden mist, diffused across a shell that spans millions of miles. At first, it feels impossible. How could anything this massive exist? But the more you think about it, the more it begins to make sense. Not as an act of madness or ambition, but as the inevitable result of time, patience, and quiet intention. When Freeman Dyson first proposed the idea of a civilization surrounding its star, many imagined a solid shell, an immense, unbroken sphere, encasing the sun like a lantern. A giant hollow structure, collecting every drop of light from within and turning it into energy. But the reality of such a thing is more complex. A solid shell would require impossible materials, stronger than anything we know. It would need to resist the gravitational pull of the star and the forces of its own mass without collapsing inward or tearing itself apart. The concept is elegant in imagination, but in practice, it would be unstable. A fragile bubble poised too close to catastrophe. And so, the idea evolved. Not a rigid sphere, but a swarm. A Dyson swarm. Thousands, perhaps millions, of individual structures, solar collectors, satellites, habitats, each orbiting the star independently, like bees around a hive or petals fluttering in a breeze. They don't touch. They don't block each other. They simply move in harmony, following paths of carefully calculated balance, spread across different orbits, tilting and adjusting to maximize their exposure to light. From a distance, the star may appear dimmer, even hidden, but it still burns, as fiercely as ever, its light simply redirected, caught in a net of minds and machines. This concept is far more achievable, at least in theory. Each component of the swarm could be small, launched one at a time, built from material mined from asteroids or moons. No single piece has to be monumental. No central control is needed. The swarm is a system of cooperation, tiny machines, or even habitats, working together without touching, without colliding. Over centuries, or even millennia, the network grows, becoming denser, more efficient, more complete. It's a structure that breathes with the pace of civilizations that have learned to live slowly, to think in centuries, not years. And this is where the dream becomes a kind of cosmic lullaby. Picture this. Each collector in the swarm is like a sunflower, turning its face toward the light, gathering energy silently, transmitting it to distant planets, stations, or storage hubs. They do not flash. They do not shout. They do not race. They drift. They rotate. They hum with quiet purpose. Somewhere within that swarm, there might be cities, not like ours, grounded and noisy, but suspended in zero gravity, wrapped in solar fields, blooming with strange plants or artificial life, bathed in eternal day. The beings who live there may not sleep as we do, but they may rest in their own way. They may dream. They may float through libraries of light, through gardens of glass and plasma. They may no longer measure time in days and nights, but in cycles of the swarm. And it's not just about collecting light. Each part of the swarm can have a dual purpose. Some reflect, some absorb, some transmit. Some may shield their worlds from radiation. Some may redirect energy to distant probes traveling between stars. Some may store information, each one a floating archive of memories, art and knowledge. The swarm becomes more than just a power station. It becomes an ecosystem, a culture, a physical expression of the civilization's values and vision, a structure not built to dominate, but to endure, not constructed in a rush, but in contemplation. It's easy to imagine how such a civilization might begin. First, small satellites are launched to gather more solar power than a planet can provide. Then larger ones. Factories are built in orbit, using materials not from Earth-like planets, but from airless, low-gravity bodies that are easier to mine and move. Over centuries, more of the star's light is caught. Less escapes into space. Eventually, the star grows dimmer from afar, hidden behind a veil of orbiting collectors, not extinguished, not imprisoned, but embraced, held in a network of technology that neither harms nor wastes. It is a portrait of balance, of stillness, a civilization that has turned its energy needs into a quiet act of celestial choreography. From Earth, we might look into the sky and see only a faint infrared glow, a strange anomaly, a star that doesn't behave as it should, a dimness where brightness once was. We might send signals, we might wonder, but we may never know for sure, because such a swarm, so vast and slow, would not be shouting across the stars. It would be content, self-contained, whispering only to itself. And that, perhaps, is the most beautiful part of the Dyson swarm. It's not just an engineering marvel, it's a philosophy made real, a belief in long-term thinking, in quiet progress, in respectful use of energy, a testament not just to survival, but to peace. As you lie there now, eyes growing heavier, let your mind drift into that orbit. Picture yourself floating among the swarm, light wrapping softly around you, machines turning in silence, stars glimmering far beyond. There is no danger here, no haste, only a gentle, endless spinning in the light of a star that will shine for billions of years. And around it, a civilization that has learned how to wait. Somewhere between the firelight of ancient human camps and the invisible currents of energy flowing through spacefaring civilizations lies a quiet scale, a way to measure the slow, powerful climb from fragility to cosmic presence. It's called the Kardashev scale, and it begins with a simple idea. The more energy a civilization can use, the more capable it becomes. Not in terms of war or conquest, but in terms of resilience, stability, and awareness. The Russian astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev proposed it in 1964, asking a question that echoed the dreams of people like Freeman Dyson. If life keeps evolving, if intelligence survives the chaos of its youth, what does it become? What does it need? The scale begins at Type 1, a civilization that can use all the energy available on its home planet. That means every wave crashing against a shore, every beam of sunlight falling on a rooftop, every gust of wind, every drop of fuel, every flicker of geothermal heat from the depths of the planet. We, humanity, are not quite there yet. We're somewhere around 0.7 on the scale. We've learned to split atoms, to send probes into deep space, to power entire cities, yet still we burn ancient carbon, we lose energy in transmission, we fight over resources. Reaching Type 1 isn't just a technical challenge, it's a milestone of maturity. It means learning to live in balance with a planet, to harness it fully without ruining it. A civilization that reaches Type 1 has grown into its skin. It has learned how to live with its home. But then comes Type 2, the level where the Dyson sphere lives. A civilization that can collect and use all the energy radiated by its star. Not just what reaches one world, but all of it. The difference between Type 1 and Type 2 is like the difference between a village and an ocean-spanning fleet. It's not just a matter of scale, it's a transformation in thinking. A Type 2 civilization has left behind the constraints of a single world. It doesn't fear planetary disasters, resource collapse, or environmental limits because it has expanded beyond them. Its power comes not from extraction or exhaustion, but from elegant collection. It lives in orbit. It thinks in centuries. It sees energy not as something to fight over, but as something to quietly gather and share. Reaching this level isn't about a single moment or invention. It happens over long, graceful arcs of time. Perhaps it begins when a planet first launches solar collectors into orbit, when mining shifts from ground to asteroid, when more power is generated in space than on the surface. Slowly, generation by generation, the systems grow. The infrastructure expands. Machines begin to build other machines. A network of collectors forms, looping gently around the sun. There is no central command, no dictator flipping a switch. It's a movement, organic and steady, like coral growing in a sea of starlight. And yet, for all its immensity, a Type 2 civilization might not appear grand to the eye. It could be quiet, even invisible, from across the galaxy. Its collectors wouldn't shine, they would absorb. Its homes wouldn't sprawl, they would float. The beings living in this stage may not build monuments, but memories. Their art might be etched in light. Their music might ripple across magnetic fields. Their language might be stored in the dance of electrons on distant satellites. From our perspective, they might look like nothing at all, but they would be there, living in the light of their sun, wrapped in the warmth they've mastered, not to dominate it, but to coexist with it. And then, beyond that, lies Type 3, the stuff of legend, a civilization that harnesses the energy of an entire galaxy, billions of stars, each one surrounded by swarms or shells, each one contributing its light to a collective future. It's hard to imagine such a thing. It stretches the limits of thought. To reach that point, life would have to be not only enduring, but unified across unthinkable distances. It would have to build across thousands of light years, coordinate across millions of years. It would no longer be a single species or culture, but something broader, a galactic ecology of minds, of machines, of meaning. We don't know if such a thing is even possible, but the scale remains, a way to measure the slow, silent climb toward a destiny written in energy. The beauty of the Kardashev scale is that it doesn't require us to know what a civilization looks like or what it believes. It only asks us to imagine how much light it can use. It invites us to dream about long-term survival, not as a race to the top, but as a journey of growing harmony. And as you lie here now, thinking of these quiet steps up a cosmic ladder, you may wonder what the next rung might feel like. Perhaps it's not about complexity. Perhaps it's not about control. Maybe, instead, it's about peace. A civilization that no longer rushes, that no longer panics, that has learned to wait, to gather, to glow softly in the dark, like a lantern floating in space. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, far beyond our tiny Type 0 world, someone else is already there, resting in the comfort of a completed swarm, listening to the music of their sun, watching the stars rise and fall through networks of solar collectors, dreaming not of conquest, but of continuity, not of reaching new stars, but of becoming one. Before anything so vast and graceful as a Dyson swarm can rise from orbit and drift in perfect synchrony around a star, there's a quiet question that must first be answered. What do you build it from? On Earth, even the grandest towers are bound by the weight of gravity and the limits of their materials. Steel can bend, Concrete can crack. Even the strongest alloys have their breaking points. Now imagine trying to construct something not just taller than a skyscraper, but larger than a planet, spread across millions of kilometers in the vacuum of space, exposed to radiation, extremes of temperature, and gravitational pulls from all sides. It's not just a question of vision, it's a question of matter itself. What kind of material is strong enough to dance around a sun? What kind of civilization can weave those materials into a living structure that never stops turning? One of the early answers lies in what we already know: carbon. Not in the soft form of charcoal or the fragile structure of coal, but in its purest, most crystalline possibilities. Carbon, arranged in the right way, becomes something else entirely. Something unimaginably strong, impossibly light, and incredibly stable. Carbon nanotubes, graphene. These aren't science fiction, they're real, though still difficult for us to produce in large quantities. Imagine a sheet of graphene, just one atom thick, yet hundreds of times stronger than steel, and so light it could float like a leaf on solar wind. Now imagine billions of these sheets, carefully engineered, interlocked into panels that unfold in orbit like petals of a machine flower. These materials could become the building blocks of the swarm: solar collectors, communication arrays, radiators, habitats, each piece born from a thread thinner than human hair, but stronger than anything we've ever held. But carbon might only be the beginning. A truly advanced civilization, one that has learned to mine asteroids, disassemble moons, or extract elements from the atmospheres of gas giants, would likely have discovered new materials, substances that shimmer with properties we can only guess at, materials that deflect radiation effortlessly, that heal their own damage, that can transform energy not just into electricity, but into whatever the civilization needs: data, heat, propulsion, or even new forms of life. These wouldn't be passive materials. They'd be active, intelligent in their own way. Perhaps they could fold and unfold themselves based on solar position, changing shape like leaves following the sun. Perhaps they could communicate silently, syncing their behavior across millions of kilometers without lag, without error. What looks from afar like a static network of satellites might, up close, be more like a living skin stretched around the sun, a dynamic, ever-adapting mesh of energy and intention. And how would such materials be assembled, not by hand, not by crude missions, but by autonomous systems, factories in space, designed not to mimic the noise and waste of terrestrial industry, but to work in harmony with their environment? These factories could be seeded from tiny starter kits, launched from the civilization's homeworld, or built from early orbital stations. Once in space, they would begin to harvest local resources: metallic asteroids, icy comets, even the dust and debris already circling the star. Using 3D printing or molecular assembly, they would turn raw materials into components, components into structures, and structures into systems. It would be slow at first, years to build a single collector, decades to build a fleet. But then, as more collectors come online and more factories are launched, the process accelerates. The swarm grows, not like a wall being built brick by brick, but like a forest growing from scattered seeds. Each new piece helps grow the next. Each new satellite sends power back to the factories, increasing output, expanding reach. There's no rush, no deadline, only steady, graceful expansion, guided by algorithms tuned for balance, safety, and scale. This, then, is not the chaos of human construction, where dust fills the air and engines roar. This is something quieter, a choreography of matter, unfolding in space over centuries. A civilization doesn't build a Dyson swarm the way a person builds a house. It grows it, it nurtures it, and in doing so, it transforms not just the star it surrounds, but itself. The civilization that sets such a process in motion must be one that has moved past short-term thinking. It must be patient, deliberate. It must have solved the problems that so often destroy lesser societies: war, greed, environmental collapse. It must see itself not as the center of the universe, but as a steward of its star. And it must understand that the materials it uses are not just tools, but the foundation of its relationship with energy, with space, and with time. Even more fascinating is the thought that some of these materials might not be physical in any familiar sense at all. Imagine collectors made of exotic particles, stable only in the vacuum of space, or structures held together by magnetic fields, shaped not by steel beams, but by the dance of charged plasma. Perhaps gravity itself is bent, warped into artificial fields that hold the swarm in place like a sculpture carved from space-time. Such ideas live at the edge of our understanding, in the realm where physics meets imagination. But if a civilization has endured long enough to begin building a Dyson swarm, then surely it has also pushed past the boundaries of what we call impossible. What seems like science fiction to us might be their everyday material science, as familiar to them as bricks and nails are to us. And as the swarm grows, its components begin to take on identities of their own. Some are simple collectors, designed to drink in sunlight and beam it away. Others become habitats, spinning gently for artificial gravity, housing beings who have never known a night sky, who live forever in the warm twilight of their engineered sun. Still others are data vaults, storing centuries of art, philosophy, and history, thoughts carved into light, preserved in memory that never fades. The materials they are built from must carry more than structural strength. They must carry meaning, purpose, continuity, and so the swarm becomes not just a shell or a machine, but a canvas, a living expression of a civilization's values, their dreams cast into orbit, etched into the very fabric of the solar system. And when you look up, lying still beneath your own quiet sky, and think of such things, materials that shimmer in the dark, factories that breathe in silence, structures that spin around the sun like petals in bloom, you begin to feel how small we are, and yet how boundless our path might be. The seeds of those materials may already exist in our world, waiting for us to learn how to use them, waiting for us to become wise enough, calm enough, and kind enough to build not just bigger things, but better things. Things that last, things that orbit, things that do not shout, but shine. There's a question that hums quietly beneath all our searching, beneath every telescope turned toward the stars, beneath every signal we beam into the void, and every strange reading we record from the darkness. If it's possible to build something as immense and graceful as a Dyson swarm, if civilizations truly can rise to surround their stars and gather their light like a harvest, then where are they? If the universe is so old, and the stars so many, and the physics so universal, why haven't we seen the unmistakable signs of someone else doing exactly what we might one day attempt ourselves? This question is often called the Fermi paradox, named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who famously asked, "Where is everybody?" It sits at the center of modern cosmological thought, like a riddle written in starlight. The observable universe contains hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars, many with planets, some of which surely have water, atmospheres, warmth. If life can arise here, why not there? If intelligence evolves here, why not elsewhere? And if that intelligence grows and survives and builds, why does the sky remain so quiet? One possible answer lies not in what we can see, but in what we can't. Civilizations that reach the scale needed to build a Dyson swarm may not be loud. They may not transmit radio waves into space, or launch flashy spacecraft across the stars. They may not send greetings etched into golden records, or build monuments designed to be seen from light years away. Perhaps, by the time a civilization matures enough to harness the full energy of its star, it no longer has any interest in being found. Perhaps it turns inward, toward reflection, sustainability, balance. It doesn't shout, it listens. It doesn't conquer, it coexists. And in doing so, it grows dimmer to the outside universe, not brighter. But even in that dimness, there may still be traces, subtle signs. Infrared light, for example, the gentle warmth of a structure absorbing starlight and re-emitting it at lower energy. A star surrounded by a Dyson swarm would no longer blaze in visible light the way we expect. It would still shine, but differently. Its spectrum would shift, its brightness would dip. To a distant observer, it might look like a star flickering or fading without a clear cause. And here is where the mystery deepens, because we have found such a star. It's called KIC 8462852, though many know it by its more poetic nickname, Tabby's Star. Located about 1,470 light-years away, this star caught the attention of astronomers in 2015 when it began to behave in ways no one could explain. Its light dipped dramatically, not once, but many times, and not in any regular pattern. It wasn't a planet passing in front. It wasn't a binary star system. It wasn't dust behaving as dust should. It was something else, something strange, something that didn't fit the models. For a while, speculation ran wild. Could this be a Dyson swarm? Was this the signature of a civilization collecting its star's light, one collector at a time? Of course, science urges caution. Natural explanations are always more likely. A cloud of comets, an unusual ring of dust, perhaps an event we simply don't understand yet. But even if Tabby's star isn't surrounded by megastructures, the fact remains, it behaves oddly. And it reminds us that our view of the cosmos is incomplete. We're only just beginning to learn how to see with the right eyes. We still think in terms of planets and stars. But what if we need to start thinking in terms of intentions, of designs, of light that bends not by gravity alone, but by will? There's also the possibility that we're looking at the wrong timescale. A Dyson swarm wouldn't be built overnight. It might take centuries just to begin, millennia to grow, millions of years to complete. If civilizations build them, they do so slowly, methodically, carefully. And in that slowness, we might be catching them mid-process. A star dimming slowly over decades could be the sign of a swarm under construction, or perhaps a swarm decaying, falling out of orbit after a civilization has vanished. The quiet fading of starlight might be not the shout of success, but the whisper of memory. And then, of course, comes the most unsettling possibility of all, that we're simply not ready to see. Not technologically, not philosophically. Maybe the signs are all around us, woven into cosmic background noise, folded into readings dismissed as errors, hidden in the gaps between our data. Maybe advanced civilizations don't leave behind structures or signals, but patterns, subtle manipulations of entropy, time, magnetism, quantum fields. Maybe their existence is not something we can detect with telescopes, but only sense with a deeper kind of knowing. Maybe they live in dimensions of thought or computation we haven't yet discovered, using energy not to build, but to become. It's humbling to consider that the silence of the sky might not be silence at all, but music we haven't learned to hear, a lullaby whispered across the void by beings who have nothing left to prove, who don't crave expansion or conquest, who have found peace orbiting their star in golden silence, content to gather light and drift gently through time. If such civilizations exist, they may be watching, not with eyes, but with curiosity, with empathy, wondering if one day we too will learn to listen, to grow not louder, but wiser. And so we continue to look. We map the stars. We study their flickers. We build better instruments and launch them into space, not just to find life, but to understand what life could become. Each unexplained signal, each irregular dip, each whisper from the void becomes a thread in a tapestry we are only beginning to weave. And as we lie still, eyes closed beneath our own star, we can't help but wonder, are they out there, already asleep in the light? Are we already being watched, not with judgment, but with hope? Not as invaders, but as future companions in the long quiet of the cosmos? In the end, the question isn't just where they are, it's also who we are. Are we the kind of beings who will reach for the stars with care? Who will build not to dominate, but to preserve? Who will look at a star not as a thing to burn, but as a partner to nurture? The silence invites us not to despair, but to imagine. And in that imagining, perhaps we take our first gentle steps toward the kind of civilization that one day might disappear into starlight too, not lost, but fulfilled. Not alone, but finally understood. Imagine a world where energy is no longer a limitation, where there is no struggle to power cities, no scarcity to drive conflict, no dark nights pierced by flickering lights, only an endless and gentle glow. A world where entire civilizations drift in quiet contentment, their every need met not by extraction or combustion, but by the steady breath of a star, its warmth collected and redistributed with the same patience and elegance that shape galaxies. This is the promise of a Dyson swarm fully realized, not merely as an engineering achievement, but as the cornerstone of a civilization that has transcended scarcity and redefined what it means to live. With access to the full output of a star, billions of times more energy than we currently use, there is no longer a concept of shortage. Energy is no longer a resource to be traded, hoarded, or fought over. It becomes the air of a new kind of life, so abundant that it fades into the background of existence. Imagine floating cities orbiting the sun, not anchored to a planet, but suspended in light itself, their structures powered effortlessly by streams of solar energy, transmitted wirelessly across space. These cities do not pollute, they do not consume, they simply hum, gently balanced in a harmony of motion, bathed in an eternal day. Such energy could sustain vast artificial worlds, not bound by the limitations of planets, O'Neill cylinders the size of moons, rotating to create gravity, with entire ecosystems flourishing within, forests, rivers, oceans, clouds drifting across artificial skies, each world tailor-made, sculpted not for survival, but for beauty, comfort, and expression. With enough energy, every citizen could have the equivalent of a personal planet if they wished, though in truth, they might choose simplicity. Perhaps they have learned by then that fulfillment comes not from vast possessions, but from quiet purpose and shared wonder. Art would flourish like never before. With infinite energy, one could sculpt with light, paint with plasma, compose symphonies that ripple through magnetic fields, or write poetry into the fabric of artificial atmospheres. Museums might orbit the sun, their galleries carved into crystal asteroids, showcasing creations not meant to be preserved, but continuously generated, living art that responds to the observer's thoughts and memories. Storytellers could simulate entire worlds to tell a tale, letting listeners walk through history, through myth, through dreamscapes made real by the power of light. Education would no longer be limited by space, resources, or time. Anyone could access lifetimes of learning in seconds. Children might play in zero-gravity gardens, while absorbing languages through song and motion. Entire libraries could be compressed into a sliver of space and transmitted across the solar system in moments. Even memory itself could be preserved, not just books or data, but emotions, sensations, and lived experience. Generations would not pass knowledge like a fragile flame, but share it directly, in full color and depth, through neural connection or virtual immersion. But perhaps the most profound shift would be in how these beings relate to time. With their basic needs so thoroughly met, the rush of life would slow. There would be no reason to hurry, no ticking clock of exhaustion or crisis. Instead, projects could span centuries. A single sculpture might take a lifetime to complete, and yet that would not be considered slow. It would simply be complete when it was ready. Relationships, too, could deepen beyond anything we understand. Friendships nurtured over hundreds of years. Lifetimes intertwined, not by obligation, but by shared growth and endless discovery. Love not rushed, but enduring like orbit itself. Even nature could be preserved and extended. The energy of the swarm could maintain entire biospheres, not just for function, but for memory, for reverence. Rainforests recreated on floating platforms, deserts kept in balance as living poetry, coral reefs maintained in microgravity tanks with perfect ocean currents. No species would go extinct unless it chose to. No climate would change, except by design. Every leaf, every wing, every ripple of water could be part of a conscious symphony, curated and cared for by those who finally understand the value of coexistence. And beyond these worlds, probes would drift gently between the stars, fueled not by bursts of flame, but by steady beams of solar power, pushed forward like ships on solar winds. These probes might carry minds, digital versions of curious explorers, traveling across centuries to greet other stars, to learn, to witness, and perhaps to find others who have also surrounded their suns in silence. These would not be desperate missions for survival, but pilgrimages of wonder. For a civilization with all the energy it needs has no reason to flee, only to reach, to extend a hand across the night. At the heart of it all, the Dyson swarm becomes more than just a machine. It becomes a promise kept, a dream fulfilled, not of power in the traditional sense, but of peace, a peace born from abundance, a silence not of emptiness but of contentment, a stillness that comes when every need is met, when life no longer must fight to exist, but is free to explore what existence truly means. And perhaps, in the minds of those who live within such a civilization, there is still room for sleep. Not the restless sleep of survival, but the calm sleep of understanding. To close one's eyes, knowing the sun will shine forever, and that every photon of that light is being used not to consume, but to create. So as you lie beneath your own sky, under the quiet pulse of a distant star, you can let your thoughts drift to this place, this future, this possibility, a future not defined by darkness, but by light used wisely, not by expansion, but by harmony, a future where the energy of 1,000 Earths hums softly through the night, warming not just machines or buildings, but hearts, a future that waits quietly at the edge of imagination, glowing softly in the golden quiet of a star embraced. Imagine drifting into wakefulness in a world with no sunrise and no sunset. There is no morning and no evening, no long shadows crawling across the floor, no sudden burst of dawn or gentle fall of dusk. Instead, a gentle light suffuses everything, golden and soft, everywhere at once, never too harsh, never fully absent. The sky overhead is not a vault of blue, nor a darkness sprinkled with stars, but a radiant glow that feels both endless and intimate, as if the world itself is nestled inside a cocoon of warmth. This is life inside a Dyson sphere, where the star is no longer a distant sun in the sky, but an ever-present ocean of energy enveloping every moment and every breath. It is difficult to imagine, yet deeply calming. To live inside such a structure would be to inhabit a landscape entirely different from the one we know. The rules of light and darkness are rewritten. The horizon is not the end of a planet, but the gentle curve of an interior world, so vast that it feels limitless, so serene that it soothes the mind as easily as the body. Gravity might feel the same, engineered, perfect, always holding you softly to the ground. The ground itself might be meadows, forests, lakes, or gardens stretching in every direction, woven together with intention and artistry. Perhaps you would see rivers wandering across gentle slopes, orchards of trees bearing fruits unknown to earth, the air always carrying the quiet song of leaves and water. There is no night. There are no stars twinkling from light years away, no moon floating in lonely silence. Instead, the light around you is ever present, like the glow at the edge of sleep, soft and enveloping, bringing a sense of peace that seeps deep into your bones. With no darkness to fear, the rhythms of life change. You might sleep when you wish, wake when you please. The cycle of day and night is replaced by a gentle continuity, a timelessness that lets every moment linger, every thought stretch a little farther, every dream unfold without hurry. Imagine standing on a hill and looking out, not at a horizon of sky meeting land, but at the soft curve of the inner surface stretching away, so far that it seems to touch itself. The world feels infinite, even though you know you're inside a vast shell. Every direction is the same, every step equally bathed in gentle light. Perhaps there are cities, but not like the ones we know. No sharp towers or noisy streets. Instead, they blend into the landscape, rising like waves from meadows, their structures alive with plants, with flowing water, with paths that meander rather than rush. Buildings made not of cold steel and glass, but of living materials. Bioengineered wood, crystal, solar fabric, each shimmering softly, designed as much for harmony as for function. If you look up, you don't see a sun, but a sky that glows with its own inner fire. Perhaps there are clouds drifting slowly, crafted for beauty and for rain, their patterns changing with the needs of those below. Perhaps there are floating gardens, or aerial walkways suspended between trees and towers, places to stroll in contemplation, to sit and listen to the quiet hum of energy flowing through the world. Everything is sustained by the endless gift of the sun, its energy filtered and softened, never wasted, never harsh. Seasons might still exist, but they would be chosen, not imposed by the tilt of a planet. Spring could last as long as the people wished. If autumn is needed, a time of change, of letting go, then it could be summoned with a shift in the spectrum of light, a gentle cooling of the air. Winter, if it arrives at all, might be an artful simulation, a time for quiet reflection, for stories told by firelight, for rest before the world gently warms again. Inside the Dyson sphere, every need is met. Food grows in abundance, powered by sunlight that never fails. Water flows clean and fresh. The air is always sweet and alive with fragrance. Life does not race against time or against loss. Instead, it unfolds at its own pace, with time to cherish every experience, every connection, every dream. Art flourishes here. Not just paintings and music, but living art. Gardens shaped like symphonies. Sculptures that bloom and change with the seasons. Architecture that breathes and sings. Science too finds new forms. As the boundary between nature and technology fades, you might see forests where each tree is both alive and artificial, bearing fruits that nourish body and mind, roots that cleanse the air, leaves that hum with stored energy. Society becomes something quieter, more thoughtful. There is no scramble for resources, no noise of engines or factories. Conflict is rare, for abundance removes the sharp edges of fear and want. People gather in circles, in small villages or large communities, each connected by threads of empathy and understanding. Wisdom is valued as much as invention. Time stretches, bends and folds, letting memories accumulate and lessons settle deep into the roots of culture. And when you rest on a hill, by a river, under the wide glowing sky, sleep comes not as an escape, but as a gentle part of life. You lie back, eyes half closed, feeling the world hum quietly around you. There is no rush, no pressure, only the sense of being held in the soft hands of light. Even dreams feel different here, unhurried, vivid, wandering freely through a world that asks nothing but your presence. In this perpetual dusk, it is easy to forget loneliness, to forget fear, to remember only the quiet miracle of existence. And so the days drift by, timeless and golden. Life inside a Dyson sphere becomes a meditation, a song of peace written in the language of light. And as you let your mind wander through this imagined world, you might feel your own breath slow, your thoughts soften, your heart settle into a slower, more patient rhythm. It is the promise of a future not defined by struggle, but by harmony. Not by scarcity, but by endless gentle abundance. A future where every moment glows, softly, eternally, in the embrace of a star. It's a gentle idea, almost a paradox, that the greatest heights of civilization might not be marked by motion and noise, but by a slowing down, a settling, a kind of cosmic rest. Picture a society that has spent eons growing, building, and learning, reaching for its star, not with frantic ambition, but with patient hands and quiet hope. Generation after generation, they've solved the puzzles of energy, of survival, of cooperation. They've woven their Dyson swarm, not in a frenzy, but with the calm artistry of gardeners tending a forest that grows for centuries. Now, with every need met, with warmth flowing in endless abundance, they enter a new era, one not of restless expansion, but of inward contemplation, of peaceful existence. The civilization itself becomes sleepy in the most beautiful sense. There is no hunger left to chase, no urgent challenge to answer, no crisis to overcome. They have reached a place beyond anxiety, beyond scarcity, beyond the ancient dreams of conquest and competition. Their greatest accomplishments are not new machines or far-flung colonies, but quiet moments of reflection, long walks through endless meadows, and conversations that can drift on for years. Their art grows deeper, richer, no longer created for fame or survival, but for the sheer pleasure of meaning and expression. Music stretches into symphonies that last for days, filling gardens and floating homes with gentle harmonies. Stories are told not to teach or warn, but to celebrate the mystery of being, to remember what it was like to dream beneath alien stars. Philosophy flourishes, not as debate, but as a daily practice, a way of seeing the world with fresh wonder, even as ages pass. The pace of life slows so completely that seasons become lifetimes, and memories are cherished not for their rarity, but for their depth. Relationships flourish, built on patience and shared experience. Love matures over centuries. Friendships become family trees that branch and twine, and solitude is embraced as a sacred part of the rhythm of existence. Conflict, when it arises, is met with understanding, for there is time to listen, to forgive, to heal. Empathy grows as common as breathing, and laughter fills the air like birdsong at dawn. Work transforms from necessity into a form of meditation. Tasks are chosen for meaning, not for reward. Some may tend to living gardens that spiral up into the light, carefully shaping the growth of forests that will shade generations yet unborn. Others craft art, or study the quiet mathematics of starlight, or simply wander, mapping the shifting beauty of their world as it changes and endures. Learning becomes a journey without end, a way to honor the gift of time, the blessing of endless energy. The people no longer strive to become more. They simply become more themselves. Each day a gentle unfolding, each night a deeper rest. In this world, technology hums softly in the background, never intrusive, never overwhelming. It is there to serve, to connect, to heal. Health is a constant, illness rare, and aging becomes a choice, not a sentence. Some may choose to live for centuries, exploring the vast inner landscapes of memory and imagination. Others might drift gently into new forms, merging with networks of thought, or returning to the cycle of life through gardens and streams. Sleep is a gift, an invitation to dream even more deeply, to let the mind wander in peace through landscapes sculpted by memory and hope. This civilization's culture is shaped by gratitude, by a kind of cosmic humility. Having mastered their star, they look not outward for validation, but inward for understanding. The great questions: why are we here? What is consciousness? What is beauty? Are lived, not just asked. Wisdom is found in the quiet acceptance of mystery, in the willingness to wait for meaning to reveal itself. The stories they share are less about heroes and struggles, and more about journeys of discovery, moments of grace, the slow transformation of sorrow into joy. As ages pass, perhaps they look out at the stars less often, their curiosity satisfied, their sense of urgency dissolved into stillness. Or perhaps they watch the galaxy with a new kind of patience, not searching for neighbors to challenge or outshine, but for kindred spirits to welcome. When they encounter others, if ever they do, it is not with suspicion or fear, but with gentle hospitality, an eagerness to share their quiet wisdom, to listen as much as speak. And if they do not find others, if they remain alone in their golden silence, that too is accepted, not as loneliness but as completeness, as the fulfillment of a journey that has always been inward as much as outward. It is easy, in our restless world, to imagine that true greatness lies in movement, in conquest, in reaching always farther. But perhaps, as you settle into stillness, as you let the worries of the day fade and the hum of your own world recede, you can feel the wisdom of another path, greatness as patience, power as peace, a sleepy civilization that has gathered its star, not to rule the night, but to bask in its gentle glow, to live in harmony with itself and its home, to turn the energy of a sun into the energy of a sigh, a smile, a song, to sleep, knowing that nothing is missing and nothing is wasted. Just as you now drift on the edge of sleep, part of a universe that, in its deepest truth, is more peaceful than we can ever know. Let your mind drift now, away from the gentle golden world within the Dyson sphere, out through layers of quiet abundance, past the slow and sleepy civilization, out into the cool silence between the stars. Picture the darkness not as empty, but as full, a vast tapestry woven from memory and possibility, stitched together by the dreams of minds long vanished and those still waiting to awaken. Imagine, in some far-flung corner of the cosmos, a single star glowing faintly, almost hidden by the veil of its own creation. Its light does not blaze into the void as before, but glows quietly behind a swarm of collectors, each one humming softly, each one a note in a symphony of purpose and patience. Around this star, a civilization once thrived. For millions of years, they watched their sun with wonder, then with wisdom, then with understanding so deep that it became a kind of love, a partnership, not of dominance but of gentle stewardship. Over countless generations, they built their Dyson swarm, not as conquerors but as caretakers. They learned the patterns of light, the dance of energy and matter. They created worlds of beauty and balance, and in the fullness of time, they found contentment. And so, as eons passed and every longing was answered, every need fulfilled, they began to slow, to quiet, to turn their attention inward. No longer searching, no longer restless, they let themselves rest. In the final ages, their songs grew softer, their stories longer, their dreams more vivid than ever. They fell asleep beneath the light they had nurtured, a civilization at peace, a people resting in the arms of their sun. And perhaps, as they sleep, their dream expands beyond themselves. Perhaps their thoughts drift outward into the soft night, across the void that once seemed so lonely. Maybe they imagine other minds rising from other worlds, beginning their own journeys, learning their own lessons, reaching out with hands still new to wonder. Maybe, in their dream, they hope that others will find the path to peace and patience, to wisdom and sleep. Maybe they dream of us now, listening in our beds, thinking of impossible things, letting curiosity carry us beyond the boundaries of our own tiny worlds. The universe, after all, is so much older and quieter than we can easily imagine. Stars are born, blaze, and fade. Galaxies twist and collide. Time stretches and folds. In the grand sweep of cosmic history, civilizations may rise and fall in the blink of an eye, or linger for millions of years before settling into gentle slumber. Yet their stories never truly disappear. They become part of the background, a subtle warmth in the darkness, a memory etched in the gentle glow of hidden stars. When you gaze up at the night sky, you're not only seeing the light of distant suns, You're looking back through time, through layers of life and silence, through echoes of dreams that are not only ours. Perhaps as you lie here now, your thoughts growing soft and slow, you can sense that connection, that somewhere beneath another sun, another voyager is watching the stars, wondering if they too are being watched, wondering if their story will linger after the last word is spoken, after the last city goes quiet, after the last note of the last song drifts into stillness, wondering if someone somewhere will remember, or perhaps only feel, a gentle warmth, a sense of kinship, a moment of awe that needs no explanation. In this way, every civilization that ever was, every builder of swarms and dreamer of futures becomes part of a dream that watches back. We are seen, even if we do not see. We are connected, even if the thread is thin as starlight and quiet as breath. The universe is not only in different space, it is a tapestry of memory, of longing, of hope, and above all, of rest. The night is not empty, but full of the quiet presence of those who came before, those who sleep, and those who will awaken. So as your eyes grow heavier, as the boundaries of thought grow soft, and the world fades to a gentle hush, let yourself imagine being part of that dream. Let yourself drift into sleep, knowing that in some small, immeasurable way, you're joined with every traveler who ever wandered, every dreamer who ever built, every mind that ever turned starlight into peace. The stars are still out there, waiting quietly. And as you sleep, you become a voyager too, carried softly through the night, held in the slow, golden dream of the cosmos.